Okay, good morning everyone, and welcome to the Audit Committee. I opened the Audit Committee at 11:03 in the absence of the chairperson, and advise that the chairperson is en route to the meeting as we speak. So I'd like to seek someone to move and second a formal motion that we adjourn this meeting until 12 noon today, to enable the chairperson to preside over the meeting.
I'll move that, Justin.
Yeah, so I've got a mover, Mayor McLaughlin, and I've got a seconder, Councillor Stupos. All those in favour?
Yep, carried.
Okay, so meeting's adjourned, and I'll see everyone at 12 noon today.
Okay, well, we will start the meeting being 12 noon, so I want to welcome everyone to the meeting. Given that, and thank you everyone for being flexible with the change of time and due to the difficulties with Rex Airlines this morning. Look, I'll just start off with the acknowledgement. We acknowledge the Whyalla and Ghana people, the traditional owners of the land on which we meet today, and pay our respects to the elders, past, present, and extend that respect to other Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people who are present today. So welcome everyone to the meeting today, and we do have an apology from Peter Cocklebar, if that could be mentioned. And I'm wondering, just to help those who are viewing the meeting remotely, if the staff who are present could just be identified.
And staff in attendance, we've got Grant Jennings as our Manager Finance, Sandra Vigar as our Financial Coordinator, Kathy Jarrett, myself as Director Corporate, Irene Adair, Manager Governance, Lisette Fisher, Secretarial for this meeting, and CEO Justin Commons. Okay, thank you very much. Just in terms of the kind of meeting procedures, if members are able to just raise their hand or make themselves known. Claire, if you want to speak, you probably need to do that verbally. It's hard to see you there. Yeah, similarly when we vote, if you could acknowledge that verbally, that would be useful. Okay, well, thank you everyone, and we also have in attendance our council's auditor here, Samantha Cretin. So she's with us for the start of the meeting. So it's good to have you here, Samantha. Thank you. Good to allow me to attend the meeting here. So just going on to item 3, declaration of members' conflict of interest. Do any members have an item? Is there any items of business where there's a conflict, they might have a conflict with? No one's got a conflict for any items? We'll move on. So we'll move on to the minutes of the meeting held on the 18th of July. Is someone happy to move the recommendation that we confirm those minutes?
Happy to move that.
Moved by the Mayor, seconded by Councillor Stupis. All those in favour? Aye. Oh, sorry, we've lost Councillor Simpson. We'll just
turn your camera back on.
Yeah. Hello, Councillor Simpson.
Fine, thank you.
We're just voting on the confirmation of the minutes. So I'll just do that again. All those in favour of the resolution that we confirm the minutes, all those in favour, that's carried. Thank you very much. The business arising, there's a number of documents there. Do members have any questions, comments like to raise? I do have one question that's on page 12. The internal controls management risk, the review of the business continuity plan. That's got the review marked of July 2022. When is that expected to be done? Is there a revised time frame for that?
And at this stage, I don't have a revised time frame, but certainly within the next 6 months.
Okay, thank you. And I'll just make comment too on the external reviews work plan and acknowledge the work that's obviously been done in completing those items since the last meeting. The register of the community land, the system access levels, grants register, and part of the delegations of authority. So we appreciate the work that's done responding to those items. Don't know if the staff want to make any other comments about those items. Happy to move on. We'll move on. With the leave of the meeting, I would like to change the order of the agenda and bring forward item 6.2.1, the draft financial statements, whilst Samantha's here. So for the margin grab, I'll discuss the other item. Is the meeting happy that we change the order of the agenda? Perhaps we'll consider all the reports first, and then we'll come to the CEO's report at the end. No objections to that?
No objections.
Okay, we'll move on to item 6.2.1. So we'll hand over to the staff to introduce us to that report.
Thank you. So yes, obviously mainly take the report as read and happy to answer any questions on the financial statements. Just want to say that thanks to Sandra for all the work on pulling the statements together.
Excuse me, Grant. I think we're struggling to hear you. You might just need to talk just a little bit slower, I think, or into the microphone. It's a bit, yeah, the volume's okay, but it's not very clear.
Okay, apologies for that now.
Just try again.
Is this better?
Yeah, I think so. If you just talk slowly, I think will help.
Yeah. So I just wanted to thank Sandra for all the work on the financial statements. I think the process went very smoothly this year. Always slightly easier when you don't have an major asset revaluation. But yes, I think the process went well. We had our audit quite early, as we do for most years, and I think we'll be very organised this year. It went nice and smoothly with the new portal process used by our auditors. So yeah, happy to answer any questions on the financial statements. Yeah, and take the report as read.
Okay, we have a report there. Thank you, Grant. Does any members have any questions or comments about the report or the financial statements? We'll get perhaps Samantha to speak in a minute. Might just go through the financial statements first. I do have some questions. I'll start, and members feel free to interrupt me if you have any questions as we go through. Grant, what assets did we receive? Oh no, sorry, that's my apologies. I just wrong notes. I just want to, I thought the comment on page 9 of the financial statements about the impact of COVID was very useful, and information about the reduction in airport numbers. And also note the impact of the generosity of the Commonwealth Government to give us some money early on, earlier than expected. I'm just scrolling through my notes. Grant, I wonder if you could just reiterate, I guess, the reason why the irrigation system assets were written out of the asset register.
So they were written out, so that was the effect last year. So irrigation assets were revalued for the first time ever in 2021. And at that time, there was a impairment of the asset class as a whole, which showed that they'd probably been slightly underdepreciated over time. But now we have a full and complete asset register for irrigation assets. And so this year, the normal depreciation has jumped up, but obviously we don't have that large impairment that we had as a one-off on the initial revaluation.
Okay, thank you. I noticed that there was a large increase in accrued revenues. Are you able to tell us what it's almost $3 million accrued revenue, what that's made up of?
Yes, so that's primarily, it's a number of capital grants. So primarily for our airport runway, that had almost about $2 million of that is for that project, where significant works were undertaken in the period March to June, and we didn't receive payment of the grant until July. But we had earned that and had submitted a report in June. So that was the primary amount included in there. And then there was a couple other capital grants for our Northern Coastline and a little bit of our local roads community infrastructure funding.
Okay, thank you. In relation to the desktop audits, desktop valuations that occurred or have occurred, who undertakes those within council?
So we do that through Conquest, and we have Tongan assist us with that process, and we use the local government price index, the capital portion of that index, as the indexation number.
Sorry, can you just repeat that again? So I just had trouble understanding that. Just a bit unclear at this end.
Can you hear me without the microphone? Is that actually better?
Yeah, that is a bit better. Yeah, it's less of an echo.
Too close to that one for this. So yeah, we have Tonkin help us with that process, putting it through our asset system, Conquest, and we used the local government price index, the capital portion of that index, to do it. And then we have Tonkin have a look at the figures and see whether they are still considered reasonable as a desktop value.
Okay, so you get an update on the CPI index and then just do a reasonableness check after applying that.
Yeah, that's correct. Yes.
Yeah. Yeah, no, that sounds good. Good. I've just got a question about note 12 with the functions note. I did note there's a very large, I guess the question is, do you use full cost attribution when you're calculating those figures?
Yes, we do. That's included in the calculations.
Yeah, great. Good. I think that's the only questions I had. Are there any more? Do the committee have any questions or comments? No?
Yeah, no, thank you.
No? Well, I'm wondering if I could invite Samantha just to give her reflections on the process and the outcomes.
All right, thank you, Alan. Thank you, everyone. I think you touched on the main things that happened this year, as far as I see, is yes, the unit rate revaluation that occurred. The amount of the accrued revenues, having that $3 million as an asset in your balance sheet is an unusual event. And so we obviously had a look around the funding agreements and the timing of that payment coming into council to make sure that we were happy with that asset sitting there at 30 June. Also then the other, which was a financial assistance grant that we received early this year, the last 2 years, the impact hadn't been great at all. But this year, yes, you received $1.6 million in advance. So that sort of has thrown your numbers quite significantly. And I guess the other last one is just the amount of upgrade, new capital works being done this year is quite significant, which is the airport upgrades, I think is the main part of that. But so they were probably the key items that were a bit different this year than last year. I will make the comments that this year the balance day audit went fantastically, very smoothly. Staff were well prepared, organised for our attendance, and as you could see from my audit completion report, when we get to that, the only thing that we changed, well, we didn't actually change, but the only thing that we found of anything that would change the figure was a totally minor amount of $1,600. So I think that sort of shows the completeness of and the presentation of the financial statements to us. So we were, yes, we're very pleased with the staff's work that Grant and Sandra had done on this before us arriving. So yeah, I think that's a good sign of the quality of the team in finance. So yeah.
Great. Do you want to talk about your report, your audit completion report?
Sure. As you can see in there, we talk about the one thing that we talk about for next year, perhaps, is just to suggest that what we're trying to say in matters for completion next year is that are the residuals that you have on your plant and equipment correct in that, I mean, with the changes in used vehicles and used plant, is that still a correct assessment? And perhaps just have a look at those residuals. We obviously we don't necessarily have a view if they're too high or too low, but just perhaps just to have a review to make sure that they are within the current market values for those types of items. So as you can see, we don't really have much to say, which is probably a nice thing.
That is very encouraging. So yeah, very encouraging words. Look, I'm wondering if we're able to have. Look, I just perhaps a question to the staff. There's about matters to be addressed in future years. Is that an activity that you think is worthwhile being undertaken in the coming financial year?
Yes, so we've actually already undertaken that work based on that recommendation and made a few adjustments to some older plant that we've held for quite a long time. So we do have a standard residual and we have reviewed some older plant items and made a one-off adjustment for those based on that recommendation. So we've already actioned that.
Okay, that's my task for it to be put in our work plan. That's good, thank you. Councillor Stupas, I noticed you've got your hand up.
Yeah, I have. Thanks, Alan. Samantha, when you did the conduct of your audit, did you have a look at any potential contingent liabilities that the council's currently facing?
Yes, we did. Yes, we received solicitors' representation letters from all the lawyers that the council deals with, and so we are aware of all litigation.
Okay. What's the prospects? Are we going to win?
I do believe I know what you're referring to, but
Yeah.
I can't make any comment on that.
Yeah, I'm a bit concerned because if it goes pear-shaped, it is going to cost the council a fair bit of money, unfortunately.
Yes, and it's up to council if you want to disclose that in your financial statements or not. At this stage, I am happy to take what council decide.
Yeah, I'd rather not, to be honest with you, because it'll open up a can of worms. But if we lose the case, it's going to be an even bigger can of worms for the council.
Justin, you've got your hand up.
Yeah, just in relation to the contingent liability that's being referenced, that will actually be covered by local government risk services and mutual liability scheme. So we actually are not exposed to any significant liability.
Okay, so I assume it's more reputational risk that is the concern then. Yeah, is residual concern.
Yeah, I don't think this is a discussion to be had at this point in time in this particular committee meeting.
Fair enough, we will move on. Are there any other comments?
Yeah, I'd just like to make a comment, and I'd like to commend the staff on the great amount of work that you've done, and the fact that it's been an extremely smooth process and an improved process this year. So you deserve absolute pat on that. For the point where even the auditors thought it was pretty fabulous. So I'll ask for more credit, you know. So from a councillor point of view, we are very we feel a lot more secure, and I guess that we build that the process is being followed correctly, and the auditors support that. So well done.
Yeah, and I think everyone on the committee would agree with those comments too. So thank you very much to the staff who have put these documents together in such a professional way and maintain the systems to be able to produce the figures. So that's wonderful. Okay. Are there any more comments before we go and consider the recommendations?
No, there's none from me.
Okay.
In the audit report, yes. In the auditor's report, yes.
The draft financial statement at the moment.
Okay.
Which is report is part of that.
Yeah, okay.
Yes.
You want to ask
I'm not able to do. Why do that? It's just this.
as to what question?
No, wait.
So this is part of that.
Page 91, I mean.
Yes, so we are part, that is.
Yeah,
part
Okay.
so you got a question, Bill?
Right, I have a question. On page 91, we're talking about misstatements. It says uncorrected. Will that be fixed next year or?
Sorry, Councillor Simpson, do you have a question?
Sorry, I do. On page 91, we have a comment about misstatements. And it says uncorrected. That be corrected in due course. It doesn't keep reappearing.
I think
So,
statement comment.
So what the misstatement is the period that the expense has fallen in. So it's just that there was an amount that could have been fallen into 22, 23, but it was recognised in 21-22. So it won't be it's not an ongoing error. It's just which period it went in, and it's immaterial, so it's just been left in that period.
Okay, my next question on page 113 about the net increase of screening of $127,000.
That's a different
Why
report.
it's not the screening was for you?
It's the next report.
Okay.
Yeah.
Sorry. That's cool.
Okay. Is that all right, Councillor Simpson? Yes.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Be quiet.
Councillor Stupas.
Yeah, I move the motion that we accept the recommendations on 6.2.1.
Thank you. That's been moved by Councillor Stupas. Do we have our seconder?
Yeah, I'll second it.
Seconded by the Mayor. Okay, I'll put that. All those in favour? Okay, that is carried. So thank you very much for everyone involved in that process. As is our usual process, the committee would like to have a few minutes to talk privately with Samantha. So we'd like to adjourn the meeting if we can for a few minutes.
We wouldn't adjourn the meeting, Alan. The staff will just leave the chamber whilst you have the discussion.
Okay, thanks.
Confidence.
Sorry.
Should go into confidence. So that.
Yeah, you should probably also go into confidence as well, Alan.
Is there any need? I don't know. There's a reason we can go into confidence. We're not intending to.
What you want to discuss?
Personal items. We'll
Could I just make a comment through the chair that this meeting is being live streamed at the moment, and so if you're wanting to have an in confidence discussion between the audit committee and the auditors, then you should go into confidence in order to do that. We will then pause the recording of the meeting and ensure that the committee members are taken into the confidential room for the purposes of Teams. So the grounds for confidentiality is internal matters. We'll ensure that it is completed in the minutes, but it is on the basis that it is discussing internal matters of the council. And so if you seek a mover and a seconder and then get that voted on, and we'll do the process of shifting all members into the confidential room, and then staff will leave the meeting.
Okay, we'll take your advice on that. So can I have a mover and a seconder that we move into confidence, please?
Happy to move into confidence.
Okay, moved by Councillor Simpson, seconded by Councillor Stupas. All those in favour? So that is carried. So just to let the public know that we will be moving into confidence for a period of about 10 minutes, and then the meeting shall resume in public after that. Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Alan.
Okay, thank you. Just have we recorded the motion to move out of confidence?
Yes, I've told Kathy that.
Okay.
Yes, we've got those details.
Good. Okay, yeah, we just had a short conversation with Samantha, and yeah, it was all very positive. I think the one question that came out of that was about the timing for the next asset revaluation. Grant, is that coming up soon?
I don't need that. So we have our 5-year cycle will sort of kick off again this year. So transport assets will get done this year, then it will go to stormwater the year after, buildings and structures the year after, and irrigation after that, and then there's 1 year off basically out of the 5-year cycle. So yes, I think we've gone out to the market. If it hasn't gone out already. It's going out very soon to get the someone to do our transport revaluation.
Okay, great. So that's all under control. So that would be good. Yeah. Excellent. Okay, thank you all for your assistance dealing with that item. So we'll now move on to item 6.2.2, the investment and loan performance. There is a report there to start.
Chair, just suggesting you go back to 6.1.1 now.
We can do that. All right, we'll go back to 6.1.1, the CEO's report on financial sustainability. Justin, would you like to speak to that?
No, happy to take it as read.
Okay, thank you. Do members have any questions or comments?
I have a comment, but it's a very good summary and the contents are extremely accurate. It's a very well written article.
Thank you. Councillor Simpson, I'm wondering if it's easier if you leave your microphone. Can we hear you if you don't use your microphone?
If I don't use it, can you hear me now?
Yep, I can hear that. It's probably an echo, actually. So.
Fine, I'll not use it in future.
Yeah. Thank you. I just want to, just a couple of items there that I noted. One is the comment about the capacity or lack of capacity to service additional assets there. Yeah, I guess that's a concern, well, it's not a concern, it's probably a reality, isn't it, of council, something that yeah, but it is might be a real constraint going forward in the future. I don't know if you want to speak to that at all, Justin.
The annual business plan and budget parameters were determined by council at the commencement of the financial year and the review of the long-term financial plan. They are parameters, so they are what we seek or strive to achieve. The reference to only borrowing where we've got capacity to basically service the loan is in line with normal financial sustainability requirements. And obviously, whilst we're running an operating deficit, we're not able to meet that requirement. So there will be times where council, despite having that parameter in place, will decide to proceed with either a new or upgrade project, and understanding that that will add to the challenge in terms of the financial sustainability going forward.
Yeah, thank you. I think the only other comment I would, just reflection I'd make is that council has a very good, robust infrastructure and asset management plan, and certainly the long-term financial plan shows that it can maintain its assets and review them where necessary. So I think that's positive about the item supporting council's financial sustainability. If there are no other comments or questions, there is a recommendation that we note the CEO report on financial sustainability. Councillor Simpson, you're moving that?
Yes.
Seconded by the Mayor. All those in favour of that? Against that is carried. Okay. We'll move on to item 6.2.2. The Audit Committee Investment and Loan Performance Report. Any comments by staff?
No, I think we'll take that one as read, but happy to answer any questions.
Yeah, I think it's fairly straightforward. I think it's very comprehensive and I found it a very useful report. I think, it shows that there was compliance with the policy, and obviously with the, if we look back 12 months ago, the last thing we would have expected were the interest rates at the rate they are now. It's good that there was a reasonable amount of fixed borrowing. So I think the policy the council's got is a good one and helps manage that risk of interest rate changes. And obviously, the rise in interest rates will be a financial risk for council in the future. Councillor Stupas, are you moving the motion or do you have a question?
Quick question for Grant. I noticed that we've renewed one of our CADs at 4.9 and further extended it till 2024. Has that interest rate of 4.9 been factored into the long-term financial plan going forward?
Yeah, so in the budget review report, there have been some impacts on interest in the first few years of the plan. So we already had built-in interest rate rises over the term of the plan, but the years sort of 2 and 3 have jumped up a bit because they have gone up obviously quicker than we had expected. But it was only sort of a couple of years impact because we had already built in higher, longer-term interest rates as a bit of a risk mitigation in the long-term financial plan.
What rate did you use, Grant?
I always build up to 6.5% long term.
Okay.
So it's probably a bit higher than probably we'll actually get to, hopefully. Tends to be, yeah, but just as a bit of a risk mitigation within the plan.
Yeah, that's good thinking.
Yep, that's good.
I'll move the motion that we accept the recommendation at 6.2.2.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Stupas. Seconded by Councillor. I'll put that motion. All those in favour? Okay, that is carried. Thank you. 6.2.3, the financial results for 21-22. Any comments by the staff?
No, once again, I think we'll take this one as read. It's quite a lot of information in the report, but happy to answer any questions on any specific items.
Right.
Do members have any questions? Any comments?
I have a question.
Go ahead, Councillor Simpson.
Page 113 is we quote a net increase on screening costs of 127,000 K. Without going on, I thought the screening system was fully funded by the government.
Yep, so happy to answer that one. So this was reported through a budget review earlier in the year. What our initial assumption was that the government would actually fund our ongoing costs such as depreciation of the asset and allow us to sort of recover some non-direct costs. But basically that's not what's occurred. So this was adjusting the long-term financial plan to what we're able to recover all the direct costs, but not any indirect costs.
I did remember about 6 months ago we discussed it going to be a $50,000 shortfall, and now it's 127.
Well, it happened in two. So the first one was the depreciation, which is 85,000, and then there was the 50,000 adjustment of the extra costs we thought we might be able to recover when we did our initial modelling. So there was two impacts. So now the model basically assumes only the direct costs of screening from our contractor can be recovered from funding.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, so maybe that's timing. We're currently coming to the end of our funding arrangement with the federal government, and we are working closely and lobbying the government on getting an extension to that funding arrangement. If that is not possible, we're likely going to have to end screening at the airport.
Yeah, they were discussed earlier,
Yeah.
in Confidence, I think.
So, getting close to the point where we'll have to make that call.
The only issue that's going to cause, Grant, is that if we stop screening, we stop getting Qantas. We stop getting Qantas, our revenue base is going to diminish. One would hope that Rex takes the challenge and puts on more flights, but I'm not convinced.
I think it
Just highlighting a risk, and that lobbying is actually occurring.
Yeah.
And we'll, sort of brief the new council when the new council comes through. But, in its entirety, or not its entirety, but it is a risk at the moment that we are lobbying for the continuation of the RASI funding, which is well known in terms of the duration of that funding.
And it's an issue not just for our council, it's for other
No,
sort of
the other
regional
five.
councils as well.
Yep.
So we were verbally sort of assured that that would be ongoing with the previous government. So we just need to bring that to the attention of the new government to get them to put that to the top of their list of
Priorities.
sorting it out for us, because it's a necessity. It's an essential service, and should be funded.
And one final bit I would add is that council made it clear when they decided to move ahead with the upgrade, and that was public information, that we would only go ahead and continue screening operations if it could be funded.
That's right.
From the federal government.
Because we couldn't fund it,
Yeah. So the fact of what's been discussed now is public.
Yeah.
I mean,
Okay, thank you for that information. Obviously, the airport has been a gift that's kept on giving for a little while, and hopefully the numbers will come back shortly, and we'll get back to some pre-COVID passenger number levels. Councillor Stevens?
sorry, two things for the new council to possibly consider. I think we need to have a stronger control on our debtors. I think we're carrying far too much at this point in time. And number two is a stronger commitment with regards to the disposal of any surplus land and buildings that the council doesn't need to generate the income for other projects. I know we started to do a body of work on that, but I still think there's a fair bit more to do. But I think that really should be pushed quite a bit in the first term of the current, or not the current council, the new proposed.
Okay, thank you. I did, when I was looking through this report, I think one of the reflections I had the last financial year was a particularly dynamic budget, in that there were quite a few changes. The council had to respond to quite a few things during the year, and there were quite significant changes in the budget. So the council's worked very hard to manage a very dynamic environment, and the financial results are quite reasonable considering the environment the council has had to operate in my view. So I think there's a lot of changes have occurred, and they've been the councils have adapted to those quite well. We have a recommendation there that that this report be presented to council. It's moved by Councillor Simpson, seconded by Councillor Stupis. With that motion for consideration, all those in favour? Okay, that is carried. Thank you. Okay, move on to the first budget review of 22-23, which is 6.2.4. Do staff want to give any introductory comments?
Yeah, happy to make a few comments. So normally the first quarter budget review is mainly concerned with picking up the impacts of year end, any carry forward capital projects that were in progress at year end that weren't completed, and any other sort of operating budgets that need to be rolled over to meet a council obligation. I suppose this year, this budget review has had probably a slightly bigger impact on our ongoing results. There's been a couple of items passed in the last few months for council, such as animal management costs, those sorts of things, but also the updating of assumptions around interest rates and what CPI is likely to be over the next sort of 12 to 18 months have had a bit of an ongoing impact on council's finances as well. So yeah, probably a bigger change in the projections than there would normally be from a first quarter budget review.
Good. We do appreciate the adjustments you have made. Any comments, questions by the committee? I have just a question relating to the expenditure in the long-term financial plan on new upgraded assets. How do you derive those figures, Grant? Especially so, years.
Yep. So year one is basically what we've got budgeted and approved. Currently, what we have when we adopted our long-term financial plan a couple of years ago, we built in an assumption around affordability for new and upgrade, and that was about, so we at the time we settled on a figure that we could afford about $2 million a year with the rate increases we had projected, and so that's basically what's in the figures with indexation of a couple of years worth of indexation added to that, and it indexes over time. But that was how we arrived at that figure. So they're not necessarily approved budget items within those future years for new upgrade. It's just an allocation allowance.
Yeah, and certainly I understand that no one knows what those figures will be, and it's good to have some allowance there. And certainly looking at past years, it's probably those figures are likely to be on the conservative side of what will actually happen, I would expect. Just in relation to the long-term financial plan, I do notice, and it was the same with the last one, that the level of borrowings continues to increase. And so does that indicate that potentially the level of expenditure on new and upgraded assets is unsustainable?
I think it's more that, as the plan builds in a deficit position over time, we know that we do have to address that. And as we spoke about in the CEO's report on financial sustainability, there are some upside risks potentially in the plan that we haven't built in terms of extra rates revenue from development, those sorts of things. So really, I think that report was about holding the line for a few years, and then we're going to have to adjust something if we don't start to get some of those growth amounts coming in. So if we can start to fix the operating position, that borrowing position will actually stop going up. It's what's really changed since we adopted the long-term financial plan, our projected operating position, not how much we're spending on new upgraded assets in the future.
Okay, that makes sense. Yeah. Something I think would be useful for the council to do in relation to the risks associated with the long-term financial plan is to start to model some of those risks. and some of them are positive risks. So, the CEO, Justin's mentioned about the potential for new development. So that would obviously have a positive impact on the long-term financial plan. Also the impact of additional projects. I would have thought that it's there's a lot higher likelihood that the council will want to undertake a significant new project in the next 10 years, or probably a shorter period than that too. And what impact would that have on the long-term financial plan? So I think it could be opportune for to have a look at what the impact, what's the future financial capacity given certain risks of the council, and how just to see what the impact of the long-term financial plan would be.
Yeah, agreed. And we have started some of that work internally.
I'm just thinking, I wouldn't mind, I think it'd be good to formalise that in some way. We could either add it to the work plan, or I could suggest a motion. What would be the best way forward?
A motion.
A motion. Okay. What we might do is consider the current recommendation, and then I've got a motion we can consider after that. Any more discussions on the report? I did have one other question. Obviously, there's quite a few projects coming forward from last year, and I guess I suspect that the major risk of those projects not being done would be the ability to get appropriate suppliers and contractors. Would that be correct?
Yeah, that's causing issues with some. I mean, our last year's capital program was probably a bit, optimistic in what could be delivered anyway. But yes, we are definitely dealing with some issues where either we don't get anyone responding to a tender, or when we do get a response to a tender, it's significantly above even expert estimates that we've received for the value of the work. So yeah, I think there's lots of internal conversations and management of the budget happening to deal with some of those, and some of them we're just having to defer the works because we literally can't find someone that can deliver them.
Yeah, and is the general feeling that the capital works program will be able to be achieved this year?
There are probably still a few items in there that are in that planning phase that I think will be deferred, but I think the majority of the major items will be delivered or will be underway by the end of financial year. So there might be some retiming for completion of works, but yeah, I think this year we're finally getting on top of some of those big items we've dealt with now, that basically the airport projects, which were quite large, and so the program is a bit smaller than it has been in some other years.
I could just add to that response, Chair.
Yes, certainly.
So just adding on to what Grant just mentioned, back in September, track of months just before caretaker, we had a resolution. September, we had a resolution from the council in relation to the state significant projects, particularly around Port Middleton Hydrogen Hub the SA Hydrogen Jobs Plan and the Northern Water Supply Project. The resolution was along the lines of the council delegating the responsibility to the CEO to come back with some resource and budget implications associated with those state projects. We've commenced that work internally, but we haven't brought a report back. But what we will do is identify that there will be additional workload associated with those projects that will need to be resourced appropriately and accordingly, and that will result in some other projects having to be deferred or delayed in order to free up some resources. So depending on where you're going with your question, Chair, there will be a number of projects that Council will at some stage will need to consider pressing pause on.
Great, thank you, Justin. The reason for my questions was just to get an indication of what projects, what the financial impact is likely to be of any projects that might not get completed during the year. So appreciate your update. Thank you for the item 3 there. Can I just suggest a couple of wording changes? I think the word "some" can be deleted on the first line. Recommends council to commence modelling. Also, I'm wondering whether we could perhaps have a full stop after the word "capacity" and just delete the rest of that. Good. Does that make sense? That's all right. Staff understand that. That's clear enough for them in terms of an action. Assuming Councillor happy with that. Okay. Are there any more items? Anything else? Any of the committee want to discuss? If not, could I have someone move that recommendation? Councillor Suter. Seconded by the Mayor. All those in favour? That's carried. Okay, thank you. Okay, we move on to the quarterly procurement report, item 6.2.5. Any comments by the committee on that? Anything the staff want to raise? I think just very good transparency. This report provides good transparency for procurement practices in the council. I appreciate the explanations that are given to the policy exemptions. Okay, if there are no comments, there is a recommendation that we receive and note the report. Councillor Stiegler,
So moved.
moving that. Councillor Simpson seconding that. All those in favour? Okay, that is carried. Thank you. 6.2.6 is the annual report, the Audit Committee's annual report to Council. Kathy, do you want to talk to this at all?
Thank you through the chair, but what I will do is hand over to Irene Adair, who is our Manager Governance, to work this one through.
Okay, simply. Welcome, Irene.
Thank you. Could you share that screen? I'll just ask Grant to share the screen so we can talk about the 5 questions. But thank you for the opportunity to present this report, but to speak to it. And of course, this is to provide a draft of the annual report for feedback prior to the next council meeting on the 17th of October. So the draft that's prepared contains 3 annexures, one being the draft report in itself, with a component there for our chair to provide his feedback. Annex B is the current terms of reference, and Annex C is a proposed terms of reference, which I'm happy to take some feedback on, noting that the Local Government Association will most likely release a governing document, which will also feed into a more contemporary version of our terms of reference. But I'm happy to assume that the report has been read. And if I can start, first of all, I thought I might start with the review of the Audit Committee's performance. And first of all, I did want to make a reflection here, and this is the same process that we used recently with Council, to actually talk to Council about what were the positives, what enabled the Council to make the best decisions possible, how they saw some learnings for the new Council. And so I've picked that example up, and we're going to use the same methodology today. I'm going to ask Lisette if she can take some notes through this process. And Grant has shared the screen for us. And so if I can move to the first question, before I do so, has anybody got any comments that they want to make?
Any comments? No, go ahead.
Thank you, Anne. Okay, so question number one. Does the Audit Committee have access to the appropriate resources to ensure it functions effectively? So if you think about the access to resources and availability to requirements, does this Audit Committee have what it needs? And do you have any recommendations going forward?
I'll answer that.
A comment, sorry.
I think it does have what it needs, and I think that's obviously been reflected in the comments from the auditors today.
Yep, certainly. I think we get adequate resources.
Any other comment online?
All right.
Okay, so does the committee provide effective support to council in its fulfilling its responsibilities and adding value to the council? And so this opens up a conversation about the linkages between the audit committee and the council and how we might strengthen those going forward.
I would actually be very interested to hear the response from the elected members on that particular question.
I think I'm happy with what the audit committee offers the council in regards to reporting and responses to questions. I haven't seen any red flags in regards to the audit committee's procedures. So yeah, I'm happy with it.
Claire, is there any other ways that the audit committee could help support the council that come to your mind?
I suppose maybe an idea to pop straight into my head might be to have them perhaps present maybe every 6 months perhaps, or have perhaps you present, or I know you probably have it in the past, but perhaps that's what we do on the LGA state board. The auditor will come and face up to the committee, up to the board, and that's quite a good way to have that other form of communication.
Yeah, no, that makes sense.
Any other comments around the effective support?
Councillor Stupas or Simpson, do you have any comments?
Yes and no. I kind of agree with what Claire has just said. Whether the committee provides value add to the other councils, I'm not convinced that they really care, to be honest with you. Point in note that we commented last year that the council rates needed to be increased, revenue and deficits. We also commented that, what was it? Skip my mind. But I think all of that went above other councillors' heads, to be honest. They weren't interested. My issue is that I don't think the elected members really understand the workings of the long-term financial management plan, to be honest with you, and its interactions on how it affects rate going forward. And that's a body of work that's going to be difficult to get through to the layman unless they've got a little bit of accounting background behind them.
Yeah, no, I hear your comments. On that, Alan, if you don't mind. I think all councillors bring different strengths and weaknesses to their role as councillor, and obviously not everyone might have the competencies that perhaps that you have in your accounting field. In saying that too, I think that what I spoke to the last point is very important about having someone like Alan present to the councillors and perhaps, you know, give them some more information, the importance of the decisions that you're talking about, Councillor Stupos, perhaps early in their term, so that if they do have any level of knowledge that they need to perhaps gain to be effective in the financial decision making of the council, I think that's the opportunity there. So that's something that perhaps we could consider moving into the next council.
No, I agree with the first comments that you asked, Claire. There's just understanding of the elected member group after that, how they interpret that information. That's all that worries me. I mean, the audit committee isn't the one that makes the decisions. It's got to be the elected body that does that. Now, whether they accept the auditor's opinions or not, that's irrelevant.
Yeah, that's the role of the council. The audit committee is independent, provides independent advice, and obviously the council needs to assess that and make its own decisions, and I think that's appropriate. I also assume that with the new councillors, the local government association will have a series of training modules arranged for them, so financial management would be something that I'm sure Justin would ensure that they get appropriate training on. Justin, I noticed your hand has gone up there.
Yes, thank you, Chair. Just in terms of this discussion, I just wanted to ask the question about the number of independent members on the audit committee and whether the view is that the current number of independent members that we've got is sufficient, or would the council would benefit from an increase in the number of independents?
Sorry, before that sort of goes to discussion, if I can add there, the new provisions of the local government reform will be requiring a majority of independent members on the audit committee. So there will be a majority of independent members, and the question lies: does this committee move into 2 independent members with 1 elected member, or 3 independent members with 2 elected members? It would be very useful to have this committee's feedback on that question. And if I could also just add a thought or an idea in terms of the relationship between the audit committee and the council. One of the things that I've seen work very well, exceptionally well in the past, is to, on an annual basis, hold a joint workshop between the council and the audit committee. And that will be particularly useful with the majority of independent members on an audit committee, because it allows the opportunity for the independent members to talk with the whole of the council, but also for the council to really share its vision and objectives and so on with the audit committee, so that there is an understanding going in both directions.
Okay, a few thoughts there. So, I guess firstly there's the what numbers should be on the audit committee, and how many independents there should be, and having a joint workshop or with the council So any comments by the committee on the size of the audit committee? Look, I'll just let you know, my view, I don't really have a strong view about whether it's 3 or 5. I think what is important is that the independent members are appointed on a skills basis, and I think there's an opportunity for the audit committee to get a broader set of independent skills from its independent members, particularly in the risk management and governance area. Going forward, there needs to cover skills in financial management as well as risk management. I think there'd be benefit in broadening the skills from the independents. I think the other, that's sort of related is that how you might want to conduct meetings in the future too. I actually find conducting meetings via remotely is not as effective as doing it face to face. Are there any other comments about size of the committee? I guess there's pros and cons. If you have a larger size and you assume that, like if there's 5 members and 3 of them are independent, that means there's 2 elected members. So that does provide perhaps a stronger connection back to the council. There are 2 elected members who have been privy or subject to the discussions of the committee and are able to explain and support any recommendations to the council. Obviously a smaller committee, you'd only have 1 elected member there, but it would be, perhaps a little bit more agile in how it works. Any comments? Any assistance there can provide to the staff? Will we ask them to update the charter for the terms of reference? No. Councillor Stippers?
Yeah, 3-2 is fine by me, as long as the independents have the skill sets, financial, governance. The third one could be so that we've got a diverse group of independents who can actually comment and pass that back to councillors in a joint session at some point in time. I mean, if we go to 5 and 2, it's just another additional cost that the councils have to bear. I mean, we're struggling under cost constraints now anyhow. I mean, the other thing, can we find the skill sets to fill those independent people's positions within the local community, or do we have to go out of town and buy it, and that's going to cost a fortune as well?
Excuse me, Alan, I actually have to take leave of this meeting because of the delay. I have another commitment, but we do have a quorum, so that's okay. Is that okay?
Okay, yep, that's fine, Claire.
Right, thank you.
Okay, thank you, Claire.
Thank you very much, and I may not see you again, Alan, because it's my last meeting, so thank you for all your work.
Thank you, and we'll do some acknowledgements at the end of this meeting. Kathy, do you have any views about 3 or 5? Or Justin?
I didn't actually hear the question. Sorry. I think I think either 3 or 5 will actually work. I think that having 2 elected members being the representative on the committee is better, because you do get a greater connection back into the council. But that then does bring with it the challenge of sourcing 3 independent members and the additional costs that will be in terms of sitting fees for those independent members. I do have a view in terms of I think that advertising for independent members, as well as doing an executive search in terms of securing independent members, is the way to go in terms of looking to fill those positions. But the other thing that, under the new provisions, what this council could do is make inquiries with surrounding councils as to whether or not a regional audit committee is something that we would consider. A regional audit committee may well then actually gain a broader skill set in the context of attracting independent members to it. Given the interest, the potential interest that could generate. So I think that that's got to be part of the considerations as well.
Thank you.
For what it's worth, Chair, I think the model with 5 members is better. I think coming from an audit background myself, the value to council, it's like anything, you get what you pay for. And I think if we value the audit committee and appropriately resource it, and ultimately get, obviously my comments are contingent on getting good interest from independents, but if we got 3 good independents and 2 councillors, I think council would get good value out of the audit committee with that membership makeup.
Thank you. I think the other comment I'll make is, as an independent member, I value the feedback from members, particularly about how they believe, the chamber will respond to certain issues. So I think that's always useful to get that feedback. And obviously, if there's 2 elected members on the committee, that's potentially double the feedback, or it probably assists with the communication between committee and the council, and that communication can go both ways. Does that help you, Irene?
It does, thank you. If I could just quickly move on to the question number 3, and it speaks to the value of our meetings. So, do meetings allow the committee members to raise any issue they believe relevant?
I think it does. Being as a novice.
And what would make that better?
I think I don't think it can be better. I think if I have a question, I ask it and I get the responses we need, which is good.
Any other? No? So question number, sorry?
Yeah, I would hope that all members feel that they can raise issues that come before the committee.
Right, okay, thank you. Question number 4 is a rather long question. So it speaks to, does the audit committee have effective mechanisms to gain an understanding and to gain confidence over key systems that include governance, financial management, internal controls, risk management and compliance?
You're asking me?
Yeah.
I think you should ask probably Solar. I think, yes, I do, because again, if I have a question to do with basically anything to do with audit or finance, I get answers quite easily, quite simply. And I get explained as to why my theory might be wrong.
right?
Irene, I think it does, and I think it's it's also the responsibility of the committee members to ensure that items are being properly considered and that we're meeting our terms of reference. So, I think within the whole kind of life cycle of a committee, there are to to gain confidence over those particular items.
And if your independent members are professional people, a lot of that information on risk management, compliance and other controls, they'll get through their professional bodies. So, yeah, they're kept informed of the potential of what's going to happen or going to happen.
The other query I would have is, and I'm going to raise this later, is the word compliance. And I guess it's compliance with what? And, when we come a bit later to the terms of reference, I'll just raise an issue there, or a question that I have.
Right, I'll wait till then. Thank you, Alan. And the last question for our workshop, of course, is the committee's view on the long-term financial sustainability and maturity in terms of risk management. So this year we had a focus on relaunching our risk management approach, and that's included in the draft report.
Yeah, again, I think we have certainly opportunity to ask all the appropriate questions, and I think we get very good reports of the long-term financial planning.
Thank you. Any other comments about those 5 questions?
No other comments? No, I don't think so.
Thank you. They were incredibly valuable, and we'll collate those as learnings and prepare a response. And Alan, did you want to take control of the terms of reference conversation, or and get some feedback?
I guess what I wanted, the issue I thought I wanted to raise is the terms of reference. Just looking at them, use the word governance. That there's oversight of governance, and I think we probably. Oh, the screen's changed. That's good. It would be useful to define that a little bit more. Having said that, I'm wondering whether we should be waiting until there's a bit more work done at a sector level. There's been a slight change in the Local Government Act about the role of audit committees, and I'm assuming that when the legislation is enacted in approximately a year's time, that there might be some more discussion about that.
Yes.
If I can, through the chair, the changes to the legislation will come in. New audit committee terms of reference will come in from November 2023, but we felt that we can actually build in the provisions into our terms of reference now, taking this opportunity of review. And then we can certainly update this even further when the model policies come out from the Local Government Association. This draft terms of reference picks up all of the requirements of the legislation as it is, and will place council in a good position from a compliance point of view. And then as those model policies come out, what we were thinking is this terms of reference could be further updated.
Yeah, excellent. I think there are some, quick changes that can be made, obviously, relating to, the terms of reference. I would include in 1.2, for instance, relevant financial and risk management experience. Also, perhaps we can move or suggest that, the committee meet, at least 4 times a year. I think the legislation says quarterly. The staff might have a view on whether 4 times a year is better than words quarterly. Whether we need to just be explicit too about meetings held in the chamber, how we can have meetings conducted remotely, and if we want to. What else was there? And I guess, the broader context of governance, I don't have any answers to this, but how broad should the audit committee's, purview of governance within the council be? At the moment, it's kind of limited, generally to risk management and financial governance, but obviously, governance generally covers a much wider spectrum. So I guess I'm not sure what was envisaged with the change to the Act there, and how broad that should be. Whether it should include, for instance, broader review of policies, not just financial policies, or broader view of legislative frameworks and things like that. So, I guess that's a question I have, and I'm wondering if that's one of the things that we just wait to see how the sector handles that in the coming 12 months.
Yeah,
Agreed.
can do.
Are there any other suggested changes to the work programme or terms of reference from the committee? No, look, I'm happy to work on some general comments to go into the performance report. Obviously, Irene will populate the self-assessment outcomes. And I think the rest of the work plan looks fine. I think the only other item does it still, sorry, I can't see it, does it still refer to whistleblowers, or should we, there's another term for that now, isn't there? Can't actually see it. Yeah, it's got whistleblower, so we probably need to change that to 7.3. Is that sufficient for the staff to go forward with?
Thank you. Yes.
Thank you very much, Alan.
Okay, there is a recommendation to receive a note, provide feedback, and request the chair to finalise the annual report. That's moved by Councillor Super, seconded by Councillor Simpson. All those in favour? Okay, that is carried. Thank you. Thank you, staff, for giving us the opportunity to consider that. Okay, that brings us to the end of the council reports. There are no confidential items. Now, I just need to confirm, do the terms of all the members, obviously the elected members' terms on the audit committee, we'll finish at this meeting effectively. And the independents, when do their terms finish? I did check my letter of acceptance, so it didn't actually have a date on it, so I wasn't sure.
This, through the chair, this is the last meeting of the audit committee, or scheduled meeting of this audit committee. In terms of the term of appointment for independent members, we have also done some research into that, and there is no date per se in the original council resolution appointing the independent members. And so we are taking it that, and I'll accept, of course, different views and thoughts, but we are taking it that the appointment is for a 4-year term, and the appointment was made by the council in February 2019. And so February to 2019, add 4 years, basically the term is February 2023. And so prior to the ending of that term, the administration will have to the new council a recommendation for new appointments to go from there.
Well, that makes sense. So that doesn't have to happen in a hurry. It gives council some time to give due consideration to it.
That's correct. So if there is an urgent need arising for an audit committee meeting from now, the independent members who are currently appointed will be called upon in terms of attendance at that audit committee meeting, and existing elected members until such time as the term of this current council concludes.
Okay, good. All right. Okay, well, just with that in mind, I'd just like to kind of formally express thanks to the elected members who've been on the committee, and Councillor Stupas in particular. You've been a long member of this committee, and I do thank you for your all your input and your passion on a number of subjects, and certainly you'll be missed from the committee, and wish you well into the future. And Councillor Simpson, it's only been a short time you've been on the committee since I've been on it, so thank you for your input over that time. And to the Mayor too, do appreciate her guidance and support over the of the current committee. And also, not knowing if we'll meet again, I'd just like to record my thanks to Peter too for his input and input into the to the committee over the years he's been on it. If those comments could be recorded in the minutes, that would be appreciated, and certainly wish you well. And I thank the staff too for the very professional and support that we've received. So thank you very much. So with those comments, I don't know if anyone else would like to say anything before we sign off. If not, I'll thank everyone for their attendance, and I will close the meeting, and the date of the next meeting will be advised. Thank you very much, everyone.